I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All like a talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I am a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado. With me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram Ninja.
Hello.
Boss.
That one felt a little shaky. What's happening?
Well, it's the whole world is shaky. Who knows? It's probably just
I blame
enough.
It's the smoke from all the wildfires.
Except for Team USA Gymnastics, who took home the gold last night. Don't know if you know this.
Hey, cool.
But those ladies are kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yep. I've heard that.
Saw a great picture of Mick Jagger in a crowd of very young people, and all these people are on their phones, and he's sitting there just watching. And
he's watching the thing while everyone else is looking at their phones.
Yeah, nobody's paying attention to him.
Yeah,
just made me laugh.
Love it.
It's a risk going out in public, being so famous. And speaking of risk, we continue to. I love that you always laugh at my segues. These are
I laugh at the really good ones.
I'm giving that a 7 to roll with our gymnastics theme.
I'll
here.
take it.
But
yeah, it's great.
Moving through the pairing sexual instinct and how it applies to each of the Enneagram types, and we're landing on 5s. Something worth saying up front here as we jump in with the 5s and the 6s, is 5s and 6s are both the counter type, or are specified as the counter type. The more I'm thinking about counter types, the more I'm getting suspicious about this term just in general. I think this is getting forced in there. I'm entirely fine for folks to say, you know what, this type may look slightly different than the others. Yeah. But sometimes in Enneagram, people are trying to make fetch happen. And
Stop trying to make fetch happen.
I do understand the 6s in particular. I can see, there's something else going on here. But so I'm using the term counter type in order to say, if you get into that, then that's here. But sure. I'm also kind of suspicious of this term, and that's my job.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable, especially bringing the 6 into this part of the conversation, I think is wise and also important because as an Enneagram community, we are having a moment of really figuring out that 6s are not either phobic or counterphobic, right? And the counter type for the 6 traditionally represents the counterphobic part. So if that is not, in fact, 2 poles, but actually a spectrum that 6s can move across for, then that also means that the quote-unquote counter type is not a pole, but it is actually one end of a spectrum.
Yep.
And I think that's true for everyone else as well.
I'm floating this as I say it, but it's feeling to me more like the idea of counter type. It goes against our theory in terms of typing people in terms of their instinct. That would be 1. But 2, and I think more importantly, if you apply our theory to the traditional list of counter types, what's really taking place is this is one of the ways that this specific Enneagram type, 5s and 6s here, end up balancing some of their normal, type specific kind of attributes. I think you see that most in the 2s, 3s, 4s, who are all specified as counter types when they are in self-preservation space. Yeah. But I'm seeing that as balance. You're just pulling away from the attention, putting the attention on yourself, and that's a balancing move. And as we get into 5s and 6s here, I think I would want to float that's kind of what I'm seeing. Sure. It's not that there is, wow, this type is really different. No, what is taking place is what we see all over the Enneagram. It's that you have a motive, and you balance what you're doing moving forward, trying to get that motive. And sometimes anxiety can really get in the way. So how do you counteract anxiety if you're a 6?
Yeah.
Sometimes that, holding all of your resources back in excess for 5s can get in the way. So how do you counteract that? We're going to see that with the sexual energy here for 5s. So speaking of 5s, would love to jump in.
Yeah, great.
As we did last time, we're looking at 4 big ideas that kind of emerge when each of the types engage the sexual pairing instinct. And for us, this is deep connection and intimacy is desired here. Risk materializes here. A desire for impact on the world and relationships materializes here. And the charisma and charm of the type can often come out here in these one-on-one bonding, pairing sexual instincts. So anything to say about that before we jump in?
Nope, I don't think so. I feel like if you're listening to this one before you listen to the previous episode, then the things that you're missing are on you.
Lots of foundational work from that stuff before. We're just we're doing the Game of Thrones thing last time on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, right. But much like the real Game of Thrones, you can't just jump in the middle.
Wait, they're siblings?
No, wait, that's at the very beginning.
It sounds kind of weird. So, buzzword of the month, apparently. Well, pairing 5s. The pairing sexual instinct coming out in 5s, I find real interesting. And again, it feels to me like there's a lot of balancing going on here. Mm-hmm. Anything big hit you just to start?
To your point about the issue of the term countertype, this instinct, when it shows up pretty strongly, it doesn't, to the rest of us, it doesn't really look all that much different from other 5s because they keep so much close to the vest in the first place. So we won't experience a lot, but this is the most emotional of the 5 place. Like when 5s are utilizing this instinct, there's a lot more attention and intention paid to their emotional life and their connection to other people. And I think that's like the big tell for me that this instinct is doing its work.
Agreed. It actually is one of those pull behind the curtains moments. If you know 5s who really engage their sexual instinct, this is what's going on in the emotional life of all 5s.
Yeah.
But when 5s engage this place, it's the boundaries come down and the knowledge of themselves is being let loose for the sake of, everything that we are saying here with this instinct. The risk, the desire for connection, the intimacy, and often the problem solving. Like sometimes 5s will want you to know what is going on inside of them as a, voicing their concerns, their frustrations. The you don't understand me side of 5s comes out here. And that's what I see as well.
Yeah, and just like simply the ability to express their vulnerability, that comes through here where it doesn't really show up as much in the other 2 instincts.
Yeah.
Because, they need to protect themselves. But in the sexual, in the pairing space, expressing vulnerability is part of the deep connection. And you have to have that connection in order to have a real bond.
Yep. This is the place where 5s want to be understood, and they likewise are going to be quite authentic, it seems to me. Mm-hmm. I normally associate authenticity with 4s and 8s in my head immediately, sometimes 1s. I think 5s are very authentic, but again, not always showcasing how they see their own authenticity, but here it comes out.
Yeah. This is one of the places that I resonate with deeply because a big part of the calculus going on in at least the subconscious of 5s who are on their pairing instinct is that it's too much energy to edit yourself.
Yep.
It requires too much to not put your authentic self forward. The hiding, the in real time editing that can happen when you interact with people who you don't really trust, that's too much effort. It's too draining for fives. And like, I fully get that. And fives who have a measured amount of energy to give to things anyway, they're going to look at that scenario and say, no, I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm. But in this instinct, there's a bridge to that space, yeah?
No, I'm saying in this instinct that is the effort required to do anything other than be truly themselves is just too much.
Oh, I see. There is severe focus that takes place with the pairing sexual energy itself.
Right.
And so, yeah. So especially for the 5, that's going to get funneled all into one place.
Right.
Boom. Seems to me that a lot of the high standards and ideals that 5s have come out in this instinct. Again, this is the boundaries kind of come down and the unveiling takes place. I'm more direct with what I want comes out here. I don't know if that really goes with deep connection, but I suppose I'm thinking of it in terms of 5s choosing who their friends will be, choosing who their partners will be.
Yeah.
That I think there is in their mind, similar to 1s, the ideals and standards have been thought through, and this is what I want, and this is where I'm willing to put my energy. I suppose that's my intuition here.
Yeah. Well, and like looking into this and hearing some of the 5s like self-reporting about how they experience this instinct, like it seems like these 5s in particular, when this instinct is really strong in 5s, relationships become a resource.
Yeah, there you go.
So we talked about 5s gathering resources to themselves. This is the 5 with the secret bank account. This is Ebenezer Scrooge, who doesn't light lamps because the dark is cheap and he likes it that way. And when 5s have this pairing instinct really like push them into the world, the thing that becomes their resource is their relationships. Mm-hmm. It's not as superficial as that can sound because they don't have time for superficiality. They will only connect because there is value there, and they're not going to waste their time on things that aren't valuable.
Yep.
So if they're going to have a roommate, they're not going to have the roommate who's willing to pay the most. They're going to have the roommate that they have the best connection with.
Right.
Because that relationship is a resource.
It's also, 5s are great at identifying people who are worthy of their trust on that front. It's because this is going to be a lifelong resource, I'm going to be incredibly picky about what I give to this person.
Right.
But I think that's right. The 5s looking for lifelong confidants, I think it's just on their radar.
Right.
I want these friendships to last, and I only want a few of them. You know?
Right. And in that way, they are conserving their own energy. Yeah. Because they know that those things that they have collected are going to be within arm's reach whenever they need it, and they don't have to keep collecting more and more because they already have that resource. Available. Yeah.
Super interesting on 5s on this front in that there's a minimalism that can be there for 5s, and then there's also the greedy acquisition side. But I see that like the minimalism I think is right on that front where it's I need just a few people of this sort. I realize they're very important to me, my health and my ambitions and my desires. But it's not like 5s are collecting gobs and gobs and gobs and gobs of friends.
Right. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And this all ties back into that idea of connection. Like they want to have a real, authentic, meaningful connection with other people. They want to share something that is exciting and promising and has future prospects. And like small talk is actually more draining for them than things that stimulate their mind. You know, like some of us get really tired by new ideas. Like my best friend is a moral philosopher, and sometimes it is just so hard to talk to him all the time because he just wants to keep talking about philosophy. But 5s in that space, Fives in that space, like that, the interest of something new and exciting and like learning more and more about a subject is exciting. It's invigorating. And small talk, like how's the weather, is boring and draining and awful.
The juice is in the topic, the depth that's there, what's to be discovered.
Yep.
The relational elements. This is not where the energy is.
Right.
I hear that.
Just for the record, I'm not bored by my moral philosopher best friend.
Oh, I can get you there, though. Don't tempt me. On the secondary idea here is that of risk. And the thing that I think on fives is that these are folks who may not say it, but they're rule avoiders. The rule avoidance side of fives may come out here.
Mm-hmm.
The I'm going to create my own way side of fives might come out here.
Yeah.
The you've looked at the world, I've looked at the world, and it can be risky to say I'm not going to, jump through the hoops that have been laid out, but I have thought through these processes, and this is how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And that strikes me as risky.
Yeah. And I also think that, like in a way, the sort of conservation of energy pulls in here as well, because following the rules is a certain way of checking out.
Mm-hmm.
But if the rules don't make any sense, then the energy required to follow them is actually a waste.
Right.
So the risk is about like deciding for yourself what rules you're going to follow at the risk of upsetting the status quo.
I especially see that with the push into stuff that we just talked about. It's the push into authenticity.
Yeah.
Of knowing who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That is it can be very risky.
Yeah.
And letting other people know who you are, likewise, can be very risky.
Right. We talked about this a lot before, and we're going to talk about it again, I think, with all of these types, but some of the risk involved is not risky to the person involved. They see the risks in a different kind of way. Like it's more risky for a 5 to waste good energy on something not worth it.
Right.
And so they see things that, like, emotional vulnerability is riskier for a 5 that is not spending time in this instinct than it is for the 5 firmly seated within this pairing instinct. The desire for connection is more important to these types.
This is where I'd want to say the instinct is balancing the 5-ness.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you can see that these aren't contradictory, but they certainly balance someone, move somebody into their body, obviously expose, and that just, it smooths out some of the really rough elements that would naturally be there for, a stereotypical 5.
Yeah.
Boom. Thirdly is the desire for impact on the world in relationships. The two people that have been going through my head in terms of just like, who is this person? Where I said this last time, it's Hannibal Lecter, but I think the Oppenheimer movie kind of has this kind of character as well.
Sure. Where
the man of the mind, who, the impact on the world is something that's forefront for this character, and you can kind of see how that might, play out there. So,
I also like another idea that I thought about, like listening to the interviews with of people with this instinct
on the art of growth.
Yeah, and then also talk like this. That made me think of to ask a friend of ours who is, we're pretty sure they are strong in the sexual instinct as a 5, and because they're acknowledge that they are more emotional than 5s necessarily are described, in touch with their emotion, desiring that emotion, and there's like family history that leads to the way that they are tapped into their own emotion. Listening to the Art of Growth, one of the things that they talked about was like the intensity of workouts.
Mm-hmm.
And I know an awful lot of people who work out. I am not one of them, because working out is dumb. But the people I know, there's a wide range of like goals with working out. Like Jeff likes to run in the heat because he wants to feel the intensity of that workout, right? There are people who set like mile goals for running. There are people who set like heart rate goals. There's all kinds of ideas about what kind of thing you're trying to accomplish in working out. And one of the things that a lot of fives who are dominant with this sexual instinct will find is that their experience with something like working out is all about the intensity. It's not about the goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, I want to lift this much. It's about, I want to lift a little bit more than last time.
Okay.
It's not about, I need to do this for this amount of time. It's that I need to know that I got to this level of feeling in my body. The way that these goals are structured is all about intensity and impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about how much impact this activity had. It's not about some type of necessarily empirical goal. Like I'm not looking to do this many reps. I'm looking to feel like I have worked out.
That's interesting. I suppose I would have said, so of all things, my youngest is a 5. Very likely their dominant instinct is likely the pairing sexual instinct. We started doing weightlifting this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Most of his goals were physically oriented in terms of changing his own body.
Sure.
This was I mean, to push into this, it's very risky to go in as a slightly overweight, kind of chubby teenager into the sort of gym that I go to, you know, but embraced it, pushed into it, tried to study everything on it, has, tracking numbers. I think that would be part of it. Although I haven't heard them celebrating goals. What I do hear from them, however, is a mastery of the topic, and here's how hypertrophy works.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how reps and volume work, and thinking through those things to achieve the effects that they desire.
Yeah. Yeah, the goal is not necessarily this many reps. The goal is to lose weight and build muscle, and to feel that in the body. I'm
curious if this may be something withheld, because I just haven't heard the intensity side. It's actually the opposite, that they kind of get, and obviously it's me, so that like they get drained a little bit. They're normally the one tapping out. So yeah, I may not be the sort of person to communicate that experience to in that atmosphere.
Well, but like what the level to which they have reached a certain amount of intensity may be different from what you think is intensity.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is and they may hold that of all things, but
because it's their goal.
Right.
Nobody else needs to know about it.
Right. When I see the impact for the world, I can see that in terms of having like impact on the world means having an impact on my physical self, which is also kind of part of the world.
Yeah.
Like the intellectual who really wants to study the things that move the world, I suppose is kind of what I have in mind. So again, my youngest wants to study architecture. This is an art form that overlaps with the sciences. But the more they gets into it, like we were visiting colleges, and the thing that really popped for him was seeing these huge models that college students had constructed for future buildings, and saying that would be an enormous. I could, through my mind, I could do this. I could build this. So that would be a place, I suppose. Another example.
And I also think like part of the relational nature of this instinct will encourage 5s to be more generous with the things that they know about how to do things better, faster, more efficiently, whatever else. Like they've collected all of this information, and they are more willing to share it.
Especially, and this would transition to the next one of being just charismatic and using charm, especially sharing information in one-on-one settings. I'm going to use the information and knowledge I have to make this person feel a certain way, come closer to me. I can see that all over some 5s.
Yeah. And I think 5s may have like it was really interesting this stood out to me in the interview with the Art of Growth guys, that 2 of the people that were being interviewed with this instinct were self-reportedly very good at using their natural charisma and attraction. And two of the people said they had none. Right? So like that stood out to me, but the thing about it that stood out to me was that neither of them were actually thinking about themselves in an objective way, but they were presenting their information in an objective way.
Sure. Yeah.
And so for both both sets, like whether they were really good at like at attracting other people, at interacting and all of that stuff, or whether they felt like they weren't, there was a natural ability to observe how they interact with other people on that more relational level. And I think a completely different way to say what I'm trying to say is it still came down to relationship as a resource to me when they were talking about this.
Yeah.
Their charisma was not for the sake of charisma. Like it wasn't about the charisma. Their perspective on it was about whether or not they are able to draw other people into them, to collect people as a resource.
Sure. What I can see in my child, and I suppose in others, the idea of this 5 really wanting to study how do other people engage one another. Like I'm gonna, and then I will employ these tactics.
Yeah.
You know, so like I'm gonna watch these YouTubes about the art of interaction.
Sure.
And building up those muscles because it's a desire. But normally, I think what ends up happening, what I see is like the study of human interactions takes place, but then the depth of knowledge the 5 has in a area that's interesting to the person in front of them takes over, and that's where the charm and charisma lies.
Agreed.
It's now I can talk to you about my field, and it's worked into. It's not seductive, but it is, and I'm pulling you in through. My insights.
Yeah.
That's what I got on 5s. You got anything else on 5s?
I think it's necessary for us to say something about the how important trust is. Like there's 5s. I mentioned this. 5s naturally hold things sort of close to the vest, and when 5s are like when this instinct is showing up, and 5s are connected to another person, like there is a natural flow of that vulnerability and wanting to connect in a really deep and intense kind of way, and trust is part of that. And 5s are going to offer trust, and they expect trust in return. And this is within that authenticity, like all of the things that we've already talked about. Trust is a huge part of this instinct.
Right.
And if they offer you their trust and you break their trust, oh man, it's going to be bad. Like there is an expectation of the intimacy represented here is a closed system.
Yeah.
And if you break that system, then you've broken something that is so important to this person.
They may stoically sever that relationship.
Right.
You may not even know that they got really upset, as it were.
But they're never going to tell you a secret again.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
It's a good place to close there. Brings us to the 6s. Sexual pairing 6s. Any other names for this type?
I really like Naranjo described this with strength and beauty at a time when it was slightly more appropriate to intend for strength to mean men and beauty to mean women.
Okay.
But the idea of a presentation
Love that.
is really interesting to me with this type.
This is the only type that apparently has its own moniker in terms of a subtype. You get to be the counterphobic 6.
Yeah, right.
As I've said in the past, I really think that this term comes out because 6s don't trust themselves. So like making it even more complicated to think through your 6edness, I think can come out on one side, and this is why there's kind of a fascination here. But secondarily, and this is probably more important, the sexual 6 is just that the instinct, when 6s employ the sexual pairing instinct, it really can come out vibrantly
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's just different from how sixes are generally.
Yeah.
And so this is why this one in particular just kind of has a, well, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So, and I love that in terms of beauty and strength. What I wanted to say flirtatious was the word that came to my mind.
Yeah.
And on those positive, captivating, jumping to the end, the charisma side of these types.
Yeah. You know who is not afraid of doing dangerous things? Evel Knievel.
Tell me why.
Because he will run out and do the dangerous thing. If you tell him that it's dangerous, he'll probably try it.
Because TJ, bones heal.
Yep.
Chicks dig scars, and the United States of America has the best health care coverage in the world. I'm butchering the Simpsons quote, but it was a good one.
It's a good one.
There's a handful of folks that come to my mind on this. It starts with the mistyping. It's the person who you're like, oh, this is what Enneagram 8s look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that this person who's so reckless and outwardly strong and the appearances, intimidating, is also paired with somebody else. And it's almost like the 6 is actually subservient to that other person or to this other group. Yeah. And that's, I think, that the tell. They require other people. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm all over the place with the 6s so far, but perhaps we could lock down on that first idea of deep connections and the push for intimacy.
Well, we're as with all of the other types, when this pairing instinct is really dominant, there is a need for connection. There is a need for an other to bond with, to really like share experience and be connected to. And I mean, this type is no different. There is a sense of needing to have another person to not only offer security, but also to bounce all of my stuff off of. Yeah. And to react to, and sometimes to react against. So much of when someone lives with this sort of doubt that fuels their person, fuels the way they behave, filters everything that comes into them, there is a contrarian kind of nature. There is a sense of needing to check the other side. This is where the nickname of the devil's advocate comes out. Like the desire to sort of push against all authority, to push against the way things are, to see, like, have we checked the other side to make sure that this is the right path? Like there is a sense of needing to be anti for this type, and in relationship, like you have to have a relationship with another to ever set yourself against. There has to be some type of depth there so that connection is meaningful.
Jumping ahead to kind of the impact on the world, that's kind of where I was thinking that their impact on the world ends up being in that place of being the contrarian, being the rebellious person, arguing the opposite side. That comes out in what are you trying to influence? Well, you're probably trying to influence the thing that you care about most, which is your tribe, your crew, your group, however that's going to look, the country, your family, your place of employment. And the emotional vulnerability in that space, I think, can be profound, because that's where your emotions can be on display. Problem solving is taking place in being a contrarian in some ways, but it's also, again, kind of that being a contrarian and a rebel in the world is just it's kind of a way of being. And just kind of, I'm thinking of this as you just kind of get grounded in, like, this is who I am, my role, and how I do things. Yeah. In process.
But remember that is part of who they are. That's not necessarily situation dependent.
Right.
So this instinct comes out of 6s in all parts of their lives, and it can be toward their boss at work. It can be toward their parent, their love partner. But the necessity of there being some sort of pushback within those relationships is part of how they know their relationship is safe.
Right.
And you can't have real connection without the depth, and you can't have the real depth without some sort of like testing. And this is all tied back to that doubt that sixes carry with them all the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm more. It's again similar to the 5. The channel opens up, and now the emotions like are streamlined. Like, I mean,
Right.
especially being the bonding sexual subtype, this isn't like the anxiety and here's how things are in the world isn't going out towards everyone. It's probably very directed
Right.
at the person in front of them, and so
Right.
that energy and vibrancy is going to be targeted.
Right. That's part of why they project this flirtation or seduction or strength or beauty, is because they need to have that other person for security and support.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's a both and on that front. The other side is that the anxiety is probably not just for themselves. It's probably for us
Right.
on that front. And so I'm voicing this concern for all of us.
Right.
Setting aside the recklessness, the bonding element of this 6, I imagine, is going to be primary because, as we've said in the past, 6s are kind of outsourcing their need for security to others. And so this isn't necessarily just others. This is one other. This is going to be where codependency lives for the 6. It's like, this is the strongest person that I attach myself to. That might be a parent. That might be a lover. That it may be a work colleague or whatever, but it's probably going to be singular, or maybe even like, this is the person I attach to at home. This is the person I attach to at work. Again, it's the bonding instinct comes into play in those ways.
Yeah, I think that's all definitely true, and also because that doubt starts from the inside, they're not. It may take some real time for them to ever settle into a place where they're not still checking on that authority, that support, that whatever.
Sure. This is where the overlap, the charisma of this type, the very much, I see this type as outgoing, as very much, being assertive in their emotional life towards others.
Yeah.
And even pushing beyond boundaries.
Yep.
As the test, as it were, like it really open to like, is this person a strong person? Like I'm sure this isn't for everybody, alongside all of the pairing sexual types, when they actually open up, it's not for everybody. It's for the person in front of them. But when they do, then this is kind of how it looks like. And that's where, I think when you were saying it in gender terms of strength and beauty, I think that's where that comes out. It's like, that's where I'm going to say, look, I'm really strong and I can do this.
Yep.
Or I'm really captivating. And like sixes, I think in this space really want affection.
Yeah.
They want to know that you love them. It's moving beyond the boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think you're exactly right that once those connections are established, then the natural skepticism of the 6 will begin to do its work on that relationship.
And that, can potentially be, in perpetuity. Right. Because in the mind of a 6, anyone can become a danger at any time, right? Anything can become dangerous. This situation is different from the last one because the last one already happened and this one is new, and anything can become problematic at any time. So there's a need for constant vigilance. And the sexual instinct pushes, gives a level of intensity to the 6 who is trying to be constantly vigilant, that gives them some strength to stand on, gives them some aggression to draw from, and sort of pushes them to strike out against their fears. But it pushes them toward those relationships, and they still are going to struggle with that need for constant vigilance.
Yep.
There may be a deep connection existing already, but they need to keep checking. to make sure that you're not changing.
Yeah, it's again processing everything relationally and thinking repressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're gonna,
And then you combine that with the intensity of the sexual instinct, and
and it creates that kind of combination. Any last words on six in general? I suppose that's what I got.
I think this is you mentioned that there's a lot of talk about what they aren't, and I think this is one of the types that like when sixes are leaning heavily on this instinct, they are more likely to look like other types, like eights or ones or threes. And part of that is because they are more unaware of their fear. We talk a lot about threes. We don't talk in depth about that. We talk a lot about like nines being unaware of their anger or asleep to their anger, or like the way I describe it, which is I'm constantly aware of my continual constant anger that is always bubbling under the surface. And like similarly, these sixes are more likely to be unaware of their fears because their natural instinct, their sexual instinct, encourages them to face their fears head on.
Yeah.
I think that is a really, like, there's lots of conversation, and part of what we're doing here is trying to suggest that maybe it's not always the case that people have subtypes. But this is one of the places where you can see it most clearly, is that sixes who are leaning heavily on this instinct, the sexual pairing instinct, may look an awful lot like a non-fearful person.
Right.
It's because they are responding to their fear by facing it, by proving to themselves that they can make it through the situations that they're afraid of.
Is it proving to themselves, or is it proving to the other?
I think it starts with, I think it's both, but I think it starts with proving to themselves.
Okay. I'd be curious. Like I suppose the image I have in my head is that some of the recklessness will come out in I can earn what I need to from the person, from the target of, that I want to show that I really have what it takes.
Sure.
And I will be reckless on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious on this one. I got two other points, I suppose, on this. I think you're right in that this is one of the places that sixes balance. Again, what comes across as the countertype is actually this is the mechanism by which the type can actually balance. And so this is the place for sixes out there. If you want to balance your anxiety, it may take place in this instinctual space, because this is the space of risk, and risk means independence.
Yeah.
And that strikes me as where sixes become a little bit more independent, is in this space, even though it's also the place that they can become highly codependent.
Right. And even in the middle of that, I think that like zooming out a little bit and trying to view this from outside of it a little bit more objectively, it can also be the case that like when sexual sixes are pushing against their other, they're actually trying to do the same thing for the partnership. Like the thing that they're pushing against is the problems that can crop up in relationship.
Right.
And so I am going to face this fear for us.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're going to enter into this place together. And there's risk there. There's intensity involved in that. And also, if we overcome this problem, look how much stronger we are.
Yeah. Yep. There's a famous boxer who I'm absolutely convinced is a sexual six who does exactly that. Like always has a very tight relationship with either his trainer or his promoter, just always down the line. And it's, I'm going to go into battle for us. And the trainer promoter is always saying, you have what it takes, kid. And that's what that guy needs to get in the ring. But when he's in the ring, he's going to battle. And what's interesting is this guy always weaponizes fear.
Sure.
He knows how to make people afraid, unlike anyone else, because, and I think that comes out in a lot of sixes at this space as well, is if they can engage this gear, they can make you doubt yourself.
Right.
Or you be fearful in the moment if they want, to be, destructive in that way.
Right.
Boom. Sevens. Tell us about the pairing sexual seven.
Sexual sevens. Okay, so we know that sevens like opportunity, right? They don't want to be stuck.
It's true.
They don't like negative experiences. They don't like sad emotions.
Heard they avoid those.
Why experience bad things in life when you can stop experiencing those bad things and start experiencing good things?
Mm-hmm.
When this instinct really jumps up, I feel like it turns that whole thing up to 11.
That's my one big point on my sheet is something of that sort. It's like where the 6 is balancing with the sexual instinct,
Mm-hmm.
the 7 is doubling down on sevenness.
Yeah.
So those who say I'm a 7 with a 7 wing are living in this
Yes.
space.
Yep. Highly optimistic, avoidant of all negative, like these are the types that are gonna paper over every bad thing that ever happens to them.
Right.
And they're gonna rewrite their memories, they're gonna rewrite their experiences in real time. And like, you know what? We're on the unhealthiest side. You know what? We're not gonna face that. Let's go ride bikes. Like everything unpleasant can be ignored or swept under the rug because there's something good that we could do instead.
Yep. I get the sense that 7s generally have a voracious appetite, but this type of 7 wants a little bit more quality.
Mm-hmm.
So the deep connection and intimacy. When talking about relationships, I think that wanting these to have the most excitement, the personal interaction with the other,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be filled with some thrill.
Yep.
And it's not the thrill of all of us doing this. It's the thrill of you and me doing this.
Yeah.
That's coming out. I suppose that would be the place I would want to start. So whoever the partner is, whoever the beloved is, or there needs to be an energy there, or else this a 7 who's dominant here is probably going to move on for something else. Yeah.
Right. But I think that because of the other side of this 7-ness, the avoiding the negative, I think that their desire for quote unquote deep connections can be significantly less quote unquote deep.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well,
So
that's what I'm saying.
Could be the partner, it could be the best friend, it could be the coworker, but it could also be the person that they met on the bus on the way to the parade.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And as long as those two people are together and having fun, going to and experiencing the parade, there is a deep and meaningful connection because we are experiencing something wonderful.
That's what it is.
And idealized.
Yeah.
And then when it's not good anymore, okay, that's fine. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Emotional vulnerability is probably not going to be the target for this 7, but there are like emotions that you have that are ecstatic.
Yeah.
And that's the emotional vulnerability, quote unquote, that like you've opened yourself up to the experience at a heightened level. That's not always the easiest thing to do.
Right. Right.
To get in the mood to have the best night of your life, as it were,
Right.
but this 7 is up for it.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of that, the intensity can be applied to, like, as 7s become more mature and grow and learn, some of that intensity within the pairing instinct can be seen within the depths of real emotional connection, but they have to learn to face that because it can be unpleasant. And I think as they grow, as they mature, as they experience grief and come out the other side of it, like these pairing 7s can start to see that there is incredible beauty within the fullness of an intense experience. Not necessarily just the happy, but they have to get through a lot to get to that side.
Right.
Yeah.
Similar on this front, just jumping ahead, when you were talking about 5s wanting to impact themselves and setting goals and having this experience, that's what I'm seeing here for this kind of 7. It's more I'm having an impact on myself. So this is like we haven't brought up the passions yet, but this is where hedonism lives for
yeah.
the 7. It seems to me like so. I listened through the Art of Growth panels on this type, and they started with substance abuse.
Sure.
Like just jumped right into. Tell me about yourself, and it was like, whoa, okay, that's where we're going.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
like, and often like the ecstatic experiences, the connection to the other person, the idealism that we were talking about,
Yeah.
can commonly be paired, with cocktails or cocaine or whatever. Choose your drug.
Right.
Self-pres 7s aren't engaging in dangerous behaviors as easily.
Right.
But the 7 that shifts into this gear, that's where that lives.
And that's part of the risk of being alive, right? And I think this is some of the way that 7s see these kinds of things is different than the rest of us. Because like if you can make a night out a little bit better by, doing some cocaine, then try that out and see if it's real, right? Whereas I know that will invite a whole host of problems into my life, and I'm going to avoid that.
Right.
But 7s invested in this pairing instinct with the intensity, with comfort with the risk involved, like that risk, yeah, there's a risk that, anything could go wrong, but life is a risk.
Right.
Anything could go wrong at any time. It's a bigger risk to not live than to constantly hide from the things that might go wrong, right? So
assertive choices.
Substance abuse, and I think it's really only being on the other side where 7s can start to see the dangers of substance abuse is only by having gone through it. Again,
true of, we say this a bunch, but 3, 7s, and 8s, sometimes the crash just happens.
Right.
That's where change often takes place for assertive types.
Right.
Boom.
Naranjo and Chestnut describe this with suggestibility, and it ties into the idea that
that's their title.
Yeah, which I think suggestible is like, we could talk about that word for a while, but I think there's the importance of bringing in the possibility of naivete in here. When you are only looking for the positive things, it's easy to ignore the negative data. It's easy to overemphasize the positive data being presented to you, and that means that a lot of these 7s can be really naive about the world.
Right.
And that's part of where substance abuse can come in.
Talk more about that.
A little bit of cocaine might make the night better, but a little bit of cocaine tonight, and then tomorrow night, and then the next night, and then the next night, and then now you're actually addicted to something that could kill you.
Right.
Where what you wanted was that one night to be spectacular. You ignored the reality of what could go wrong.
What I heard there ends up being, especially if you're a bonding type, so you're bonding with another person, you're probably bonding with the sort of person who really is captivated by your charisma and charm. Probably, will be easily influenced by your storytelling and your Peter Pan side. And so that can be...
Yeah.
Well, they believe what I said. I believe what I said. Well, it must hold.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even to be attached to someone who knows that you will go along with their stupid plans.
Right.
Like, this type of 7 could very easily be taken advantage of by the right person with ulterior motives.
Talk about that. I think I often think of 7s as being more thoughtful, but but you're saying if they lack life experience, the 7 can be in. Yeah,
not even necessarily. Yeah, because like if you're looking for the fun and you're looking for it in this more intense, like slightly more gullible kind of way, risk itself is energizing.
Right.
And you can enter into situations where, consequences be damned. Let's just see where this road goes. And it is so much easier. Like people with any kind of social awareness and also ulterior motives and lack of conscience telling them not to do bad things could look at that person and say, oh, I can use that person.
Sure.
Drug dealers probably love these types of sevens.
Right.
Right?
Right. I see what you're saying. Like again, need some balance, need some self-preservation.
Right. Yeah.
Get you in the right spot there.
Perspective.
Perspective is always helpful. One thing that comes out in sevens, and this may overlap with their security number, but you'll see sevens that get really interested in a topic and dive hard into it.
Yeah.
Into a field of study or a hobby or a project or a career. And, they dive fully into it.
Especially if it's new.
Yeah. And experiencing the energy there. Yeah. And even when they tell you about their hobby, like the salesman comes out often, and it's like the energy here is just something that's captivating to me. And
one of the things I thought a lot about when I was doing some research on this was Belle from Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
Who comes out, I grew up on the cartoon. So I have not read the actual story. Please don't at me about this. But like, she comes out singing, "There must be more than this provincial life." Like she's got this idealistic view about how her life could be, and like she has everything that she could possibly need, but it's boring to her. The baker who sells his bread, like always, like who cares? So her father disappears in the forest. What does she do? Gather a search party and wait till it's daylight so that they can go find him? No, she gets on a horse and rides into the forest. He's being held hostage by this beast man in a deserted castle. What does she do? Go get townspeople and try to help find her dad in this castle? No, she says, I'll stay here instead of him. Like she just jumps into the adventure because she instinctively, intuitively, like in the core of her being, she wants more from her life and will chase after it when the opportunity presents itself.
Right. I love that. I hadn't come into this thinking about how much the idealism comes into play here in this instinct, but that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. This is also a good place to say that like the word sexual doesn't always mean sex. It's about intensity. It's about bonding. It's about some type of like visceral knowing of that connection. And a lot of sevens who are strong in the sexual instinct, it's not about the sex for them. Sex may even be secondary or unnecessary. It's about the connection. It's about the intensity. It's about the idealized vision of what could be, what experiences we could have together.
Love that.
Yeah.
I feel like I hit charisma and charm as well. And did we say enough about impact on the world and relationships? I feel like it does hit anyway.
Yeah, I think it hits. I also think that like it's safe to mention that like these are some of the big dreamers. Like it's not just that I want to have more ice cream. It's that I see a way that the world could be, and shouldn't we all move toward that? And like that intensity and the aggression of the extra aggression afforded to them by this instinct pushes for something bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And we should all get on board for this.
Right? It'll be good.
It's good. Moves us to the eights. Got the sexual pairing eights. Lots to say here. What you got on the pairing eights?
Have you ever heard of a woman named Anne Sullivan?
I have, but only because you told me about her off mic last time we spoke.
Oh, right. So Anne Sullivan was... Okay, for some reason, I grew up in an environment where they taught us an awful lot about Helen Keller, who was born blind and deaf. And, at some point in history, those people just died because they couldn't take care of themselves and nobody wanted to take care of them. But Helen Keller's story is really particularly interesting because of how she was able to actually live out her life and grow and change and learn how to navigate the world. She became a public figure for an advocate for people with disabilities, especially blind and deaf. And the reason that she grew into the person that she did is because of Anne Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
Anne Sullivan was made mostly blind as a child, and she grew up without having learned to read or write. And I think that she was a sexual 8, that the sexual instinct was really strong in her. And the way that it came out is that she connected herself to another person and gave all of her strength to that person.
Right.
She taught Helen Keller how to navigate the world, how to figure out how to move, how to communicate, how to learn to understand and have new experiences. And this was all someone who literally could not hear or see anything.
Mm-hmm.
And everything had to be done through touch. And Anne Sullivan came into this place and said, you know what? I will get the crap beaten out of me by this child who doesn't know how to do anything because she can't see or hear. I will be hit. I will be abused. I will be the one to take all of that so that this person can thrive. When the sexual instinct is really dominant in 8s, they take their strength and use it to help someone else,
Right.
to prop someone else up. They use it for the sake of that relationship. And that's one of the big things that stands out for me.
And that's desired.
Yep.
Like, yeah, the elevation of the other through your own strength, giving them their strength. That is, again, well, I suppose we can start with deep connection and intimacy. That sounds like, especially as you're talking about, this had to be done through physical touch.
Right.
This is going to be very close quarters.
Right.
Boundaries are gone. One-on-one connection in terms of we're going to solve this problem together. All these things are at play here in terms of the intimacy involved.
Yeah.
It's good.
8s who bring a natural intensity to the world anyway. Again, this is the hot instinct. That intensity is just turned up a little bit.
Right. 8s in this space. Likewise, I suppose there's a vulnerability and a trust that takes place with 8s in this level that's expected.
Yep.
When 8s are in this gear, they're going to push for that.
But also notice that because that is part of this instinct, 8s who are strong in this instinct are also a little bit more emotionally expressive and vulnerable than other 8s.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's that channel opens up.
Right.
And this is the place of emotional expression and emotional vulnerability.
Right.
What I had written down, and it goes alongside your story, was when 8s become activists is who they are. Mm-hmm. The image of the bad boy or the bad girl who is an 8 may be here.
Sure.
And of all things, I think that describes this teacher of a blind deaf girl.
Yeah.
Because that feels like that might be a very countercultural move. It's certainly original and it's new and it's I'm going to do something nobody else can do. Mm-hmm. That bad boy, bad girl energy, I suppose, is what I see at work there.
Yeah. Yeah. There are people in this world who think it is appropriate to protest funerals for their own political and or religious aims. And there are bikers in the world, like hardcore, like chains and bats and like leather, and you do not want to mess with these mother effers, bikers, who will come alongside the funeral procession.
Right.
And they put flags on their bikes, and their bikes, the noise drowns out the sound of the protesters. And the flags drown out the sight so that the people who are suffering in these spaces, the families and the loved ones of those who have died, do not have to hear the intolerance and the just deeply misplaced anger of these protesters while they're trying to mourn. The type of person who says, you know what, my bike is going to drown out those protesters has a little bit of sexual 8 energy in them.
Yeah. It's protective.
Yeah.
It's defending their group, assuming that I think there's something here with 8s of control is not just about me, but it's me and whatever I've attached myself to.
Yeah.
So if I've attached myself to a community, that means that my protective energy and my desire to be in control over our space is going to be not just individual, it'll be collective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I suppose, what I hear there. It's like, these people are me and they don't have the strength in this moment. And the 8s are always really attracted to, and it goes alongside the Helen Keller image, to those who are in need, who need their strength exhibited on their behalf.
Yeah.
Obviously, when doing so, they're not vulnerable. They can elevate, pushes into some of their best selves. And that's, I suppose, what I see there.
Yeah.
A lot of outward energy and as well.
Yeah. I think that we also need to make mention here that attachment is not exclusively to the person who needs my protection. It can also be to the person who needs to be controlled. These bikers don't follow a certain type of victim. What they follow is the organizations that organize the protest.
It's a justice move.
It's a justice move.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the intensity is matching and overpowering the intensity of the negative.
Right.
And in this case, it is a beautiful and inspiring and I got choked up just thinking about it story. There are some times where the control and power is over any kind of opposition because I'm a dictator.
Mm-hmm. Impact on the world.
Yep.
There's also a leadership angle there that I think when 8s shift into their leadership gear, I think it comes out here. It's paired with the charisma side of things, that the 8 that wants to move things forward. I think that's just it's paired with the charisma and the risk, I suppose.
Yeah.
So we might talk more about social 8s on this front, but I think that's the thing.
Yeah, and I think remembering the way this instinct impacts a lot of other types, 5s see relationships as resources. 7s, their connection, their opportunities are often a lot about relationships. 8s with this instinct, it pushes them to be much more about relationships as a resource than other things in their life. So we talked about self-preservation 8s being much more likely to be a hermit living in a cabin in the woods. When 8s are leaning on this instinct, when this pairing, bonding, sexual nature comes out, it's about relationships. So even in the spaces where they need to be in control of the group, it's about the relationships. It's not about the group or the protection that they can offer to society. It's about the relationship between them and the people in the group. It's about the person who needed to be taken out of power. It's about the person who is being abused by the person in power. It's about those relationships, because this nature this instinct pushes them to think about how they are connected to another person.
It's also 8s, when they shift in this gear, the desire for really meaningful engagement.
Yeah.
Really pushing people for that their most vulnerable self, as it were. I have a lot of friends of this sort who will really try to pull something out of you in this gear.
Yeah.
And that same kind of intensity can go outward toward the world and its injustices.
Right.
I suppose the only last thing I have is that I think alongside this is kind of the gear when risk takes over in the heart of an 8, they can become passionate and outspoken about all these things again.
Yeah.
And I suppose I come back to kind of that activist image.
Well, I think to that point, risk itself is its own reward for these 8s. The passion and the intensity and, dare we say, the lust for fuller and deeper and more meaningful experiences. Like risk, challenges, adventures, like these things are something to push toward because it makes us stronger.
Yeah. I suppose I'm in my head is the image of the 8 shifting into this gear and having a one-on-one confrontation with the person in front of them who they are going to decimate.
Yeah.
They're going to look them down the whole time and they're going to just verbally assault them, and that it feels like all the combinations of all that it means to be an 8 focused. Again, we come back to emotional focus plays out here.
Yeah.
In the activist spirit.
Mm-hmm. I think the only place where risk becomes a part of that for them is in the possibility that the other person is going to push back.
Yeah.
And if they do, then it's better.
Maybe.
I want to have it because they want to have a challenge.
I imagine most 8s in this space are very aware of what might occur.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to make themselves vulnerable. If they're going to enter this space, they have already won.
Sure.
All battles are won before they're fought kind of mantra in their head. Because I don't know that they're always going into that space.
Right.
The overlap of risk in this type, very helpful. Especially when we didn't really bring it up, but when you pair lust with 8s in this space, as you were saying, it's pushing into that intensity.
Yeah.
It's going to be a thing.
Intensity is life.
All right, 9s.
9s.
Okay, first thoughts on pairing sexual 9s?
Well, I want to acknowledge that before we started recording, you had mentioned that you weren't really sure what to say about these types.
I'm not.
And I want to propose that that's because these types disappear.
Oh.
There's nothing to say about them.
Okay.
Because they just become whoever they're partnered with.
That's the one thing I have.
Yeah.
Is that this type merges with another person.
Merging is a big deal here.
Yeah. So there's the codependent 6, but even more so, like the codependent 9 is gonna, it's a partnership at that point.
Yep. Yeah. It's a, dare we say, parasitic partnership?
Is it always like that? It cannot be,
Okay,
or is it?
So I should definitely acknowledge that I bring some parental baggage to the to the table
Sure.
when we're talking about sexual 9s, because I think my father is an unhealthy sexual 9, and he just becomes whoever he's partnered with.
Sure, gotcha.
So my own baggage on the table. There, I have somewhat of a bit of a negative perception on this because of my own experience. But do you know what is really exhausting?
Tell me.
Standing up for yourself, planting a flag, and saying this is who I am is exhausting. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably not a 9. It is so exhausting to just be myself in the world. And when someone else comes along and it's just like, man, I could just ride their coattails for years.
Right.
I could just attach myself to that person and become their second, become their other, become their driver, whatever it is. I could just be whatever that person needs, and I never have to be myself ever again.
Yeah, at that point, your presence matters if you've appeased your one customer, as it were.
Yeah.
Like, if they're buying my chili, then I'm good because this is the gear I'm in.
Yeah. And it becomes about creating, maintaining, and persevering this connection.
Mm-hmm.
And the easiest way to do that is to just align all of my values, behaviors, etc. with this other person. This is where merging lives.
It's kind of the offshoot of the desire. You have the desire for deep connection and intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
But filtered through 9ness, this is one of the real traps.
Yep.
That can emerge.
Yeah.
It's the getting lazy in that space we talked about how with deep connection and intimacy also comes that struggle with boundaries. And this is an interesting one. It's the boundary, like you're stating, is you lose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you're sharing too much. It's that you don't matter.
Yeah. It's that your self is disappearing for the sake of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a at the bottom of this, I think, because of the sort of the focus on intensity and the focus on relationships, there is a stronger sense when this instinct is prominent. I think there's a stronger sense of the loneliness that is present in nines.
Sure.
Our fear of separation and the fact that we see everyone else more clearly than we see ourselves, and lots of other things go into this. But I think that that sense of loneliness, that sense of almost like a type of abandonment because we're not allowed to assert ourselves, it grows into this place of putting myself aside and just adopting the strongest presence that's nearest to me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm saying all kinds of negative things about this, but there's also like a sense of real fusion when this, like even when this is healthy, the sense of being so connected that you can finish each other's sentences without trying is like there's a pure connection here, like our auras have melded.
Yeah, I think that would be the positive. I think that's right. Yeah. That's a positive spin. It looks more like a fusion, and there's something to be said for synergy. I mean, it's not so.
And it also, I think that it's important to note that nines who have a strong sexual instinct also, man, things just don't affect us the same way. Because if my being is so closely attached to this other person, then person C over here just can't touch me.
Sure.
Yeah. Like whatever happens on this side, it doesn't matter because the important thing is with this important other.
Yeah. Again, it's you only have one customer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To bring up an example, we did a deep dive into The Godfather, and I was arguing for the lawyer character being a 9. One will notice he has one customer, and what you were just saying applies exactly to him. It's like, I don't need to care what you think about me.
Yep.
Right. And in fact understands that he only needs to serve one very, very powerful person and everything's fine. And so that gives him all the space in the world to feel at peace in what oftentimes are very conflict-fueled environments.
Right. And it also means that he is able to say things to certain people that nobody else can say.
Right.
He can talk to Sonny in a way like the number 2 that's not a family member to the Godfather can talk to the Godfather's son in a way that literally no one else can. Because he does not place as much importance on his own person as he does on what's important to the Godfather.
Yeah. His name's Tom Hagen, by the way, and his presence matters.
Yeah.
And he should have been the Godfather. He would have been great. Or run the company, at least. Is that where Risk lives? I couldn't find Risk on this map.
So, Risk, there's in my view, there are several different types of risk associated with this merging, this fusion. And one of that is that whatever the other is doing that's risky, you're now a part of.
Sure. Okay.
And you just go along with it because and you're more willing to go along with it because, again, you're putting your own stuff aside and taking on someone else's perspective.
It hits your wagon to a star and it's too late now.
Yep. Oh, turns out that star is a supernova and it's about to explode. Doesn't matter. You're already hitched. Another thing is the risk to ignoring the self.
Okay.
is that you can lose yourself.
Sure. And is that what we mean here? Because that's what I kind of geared toward that. But when thinking about risky behavior, that's not necessarily where my mind goes, that you would lose yourself. But
that is something that all nines carry with them at all times.
Oh, they know that they might lose themselves.
Not necessarily. It's not necessarily that we're aware of it, but it is something that we carry at all times. The possibility that in not asserting ourselves, we are doing damage to ourselves. And in the sexual instinct, that risk is turned up because we are merging with someone else's priorities.
Okay. Sure.
We may not be doing something that's good for us in merging with someone else's desires.
When it comes to impacting the world and others, I've said this a handful of times, but bringing calm is itself an impact. You know, it may not look like an explosion, but if you are able to coat an atmosphere with a harmonious, spirit, you are having an effect.
Yep.
And that seems to be what's going on here in terms of, well, one of the things that would nines shifting into this gear might push into that space.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to be said about being intentional about the direction of your energy to create peace, shalom, harmony. When nines are in the self-preservation space, we are looking to keep myself alive and peaceful and harmonious with my environment.
Right.
And if it impacts other people, cool. If it doesn't, I don't care because that's not my focus.
Right.
We'll talk more about this when we get to social. When nines are in the social space, we're concerned about keeping the group peaceful, and oftentimes that doesn't really require much because the group can operate on its own an awful lot. But when we get into this place where we are hyper-focused on the well-being of one other person, all of the energy goes toward that person and making their life harmonious and our relationship maintaining harmonious. And when we can have that kind of impact and influence on how someone else's life goes, then it makes me a little bit more like it means that I'm doing something important.
Right. There it is.
Like I was thinking a lot about, we talked about Maria Hill from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, played by Kobe Smulders. And if she's probably a 6, but like thinking about her as potentially a very like sexual 9, her whole job is to be Samuel Jackson. What is his name? It's not Shaft.
Nick Fury.
Her whole job is to be Nick Fury's number 2. And that dude has his hand in an awful lot of pies.
Yeah, right.
Right? He is really important, and everyone knows that there is no, like, that Nick Fury doesn't do much without Maria Hill next to him.
Sure. She has merged and she's brought the skills, the complementary skills there. I think that's right. To circle back to Godfather, the energetic exchanges and vibrant interactions is what I have listed for impact on the world. And Tom Hagen's really willing to go there with Sonny, and it's for the sake of not starting a war. Yeah. And that's so the bringing of peace, as it were, the impact on the world is if assertive energy is required, if the fight is required for the sake of the overall harmony, the desire is there, and this may be where you shift into that gear. Yeah. Because that can come out.
Yeah. I don't want to just keep talking about myself because I am one among many, many millions and billions of nines.
He's a narcissist. Don't.
I'm also a narcissist. So, one of my favorite things when getting to know new people, like when I'm secure and when I can tap into this sexual instinct a little bit, is just like literally going to them and saying, "Who are you? What's your deal? What are you doing here?"
Right.
Like in an almost aggressive way, saying, "Explain to me your presence here right now." Now that is a little off-putting, but at the same time, it forces us past some of the small talk and lets us settle into a little bit more comfort of being in this place.
Yeah.
I did this with one of the events employees a few weeks ago, and it's just like, it was someone that I've never seen before that was brought on to help with a wedding, and I was working this wedding, and I was like, okay, what's the deal? Who are you? Where did you come from? Because, this is my coffee shop, and I've never seen this person before. And again, it's a little off-putting, but at the same time, it forced us to skip over a lot of the small talk. And then we got to a place where it's like, okay, we're actually like, it basically jumpstarts the friendship.
Right.
And makes everything a little bit, smoother, more peaceful. It's not as awkward anymore.
Funnel of energy. Again, you're going to, and notice your energy there is a very charming, I want to engage you. You probably intuit whether or not that would be a step too far, and it probably isn't. You've probably watched them for a little bit.
Yeah.
Going to create the atmosphere for conversation.
Right.
We have a buddy who's a doctor who I suppose I was thinking of him as I was prepping my notes in this space of, he comes across as a very charming person who wants to individually interact with us. And that's in essence, in his back pocket are 4 or 5 conversation starter techniques that are similar in nature. And it's like, I'm going to go to Jeff and I'm going to begin a conversation because I want the one-on-one connection. And exactly the same thing. The connection is what matters. And he uses these questions in a charming way. Yeah. But also notice doctor, he is a very, seems to be incredibly skilled. It's a great profession for him in terms of entering a one-on-one relationship with another person who would be his patient, seeking to bring some wholeness to that person. Yep. It's the type in its wheelhouse in that space. Yeah.
And even to double down on that thought a little bit more, he's also like one of the leaders of his organization, the organization that he works for. Their job is to train new doctors.
Right.
And so not only is he providing a one-on-one experience with his patients to make their lives better, but he's also providing a one-on-one experience with new doctors who need guidance.
Yeah, right.
So that they can then go on to make their patients' lives better.
Right. Pivots into spaces where his presence matters.
Yep.
And he knows how to work corporate structures in terms of finding, here's the niche.
Right.
The thing that I can do.
Right.
Spot on. Bang. Anything else on 9s?
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's what I got. You got anything else here?
I mean, there's worlds of things that could be said further about all of this stuff.
Truth.
But I think this is good for our first pass of a deep dive.
We have many podcasts yet to be recorded. Well, I assume we'll get to those.
Yeah, that's probably true. Sunday, we'll be fine.
Well, friend, it would mean the world to us if you shared this episode with somebody you love, preferably somebody who just gets really, 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 really into Enneagram, because that's really the only folks who should be listening to this. We do have our 2 other podcasts, Start Here and Movie Typing. We tease some film Enneagram overlap, and you can find those at Movie Typing. Or if you have pals who are just getting into Enneagram, our Start Here podcast is how we do Enneagram typing, and we think it is a much better way than doing an online test. Gonna be wrapping this up. It's been a thick set of episodes. Only 2 left.
Yeah.
We are officially masters of all things instincts.
Here we go. Yeah. Officially masters.
Officially masters. It's a risky title, right? So, hey, TJ.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
I got nothing, man.
He's CJ Wilson. He's officially a master. And I'm Jeff Cook, and who you aren't just isn't interesting. Okay, so on October 14th, 1994, Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction were released on the same day. The 30-year anniversary is coming up. I think that it would work to do a Pulp Fiction deep dive, which I know I've floated, even though you have to have the severe disclaimer up front. But if you wanted to have that conversation, I think it would be a lot of fun.